Thank you, Dushyant. Good afternoon, everyone. This talk stems from some experiences I have that transitioned when I became chair, and what you find often, and you will find this, that opportunities come up, and a lot of times people will have a very interesting response to opportunities. For example, there's a new RFP for radiology services at a new hospital. And you start seeing, well, should I actually experience that? Should I engage the faculty in that? What are the decisions that go through? A lot of time it's finances. Well, actually, if we get the professional billing, we get, blank dollars per RVU. There's going to be that many RVUs. We can actually pull in, a good deal of money. That's good. Okay, let's do it. And we make poor decisions a lot of the time. So what this talk is geared towards is trying to help us think in a methodical and organized fashion so that we can make better decisions, and in so doing, really empower people so that they have a sense of accomplishment and a sense of engagement. My financial disclosures. Much of the material comes from my teacher, Paul Thurman. I just completed a degree at Columbia University. And I've had the experience of teaching this material to the division chiefs and the chief residents at UT Southwestern. My objective is simple. Look at this slide. If you can memorize this slide, everything that I will talk about will come from this. I will break strategy into three parts: conceptual, and the three tools there are mission, vision, and values. Analytical, we'll go over something called Porter's 5, a SWOT, and an options analysis. And then operational, using a balanced scorecard. There are many more tools than this, but I find that these are very, very succinct. I can give you some operational tools, some consistent way to think of your strategy. The problem that typically happens, as I mentioned in the example I gave you, is people go from an idea right into operation and usually skip over or at least minimize the importance of the analytical phase. This is why, by certain, depends on who you read, 54% or so of some big initiatives fail. They absolutely fail because we didn't analyze correctly. The goal is to put in the rigor and to perform an analytical process so that you can have a detailed operation based on the principles from the analysis that fuel up to your mission, vision, and values. The whole goal is to be successful, and those with a well-defined and well-thought-out process will tend to win, they'll tend to accomplish, they will have a sense of being rewarded for those efforts. So, strategy comes from the idea that we never have infinite resources, and one scarce resource would be patience. And if I open up an imaging center and there's one existing, we're going to be competing. So what is it that we need to do to prevail in this competition? This kind of competition leads us to develop internal processes so that we can prevail in that external world where we'll find competitors, we'll find a variety of individuals who will be both enablers and challengers to our goals. Strategy can be defined as a process. Now, there are many different terms: there's strategic thinking, there's strategic planning, etc. Strategy is a process that allows you to achieve a desired future that would not occur otherwise if you didn't have intentional ideas about how to go to pursue that end point. And we'll talk about this natural flow of events. Typically, we frame strategy in a long-term initiative, but these concepts that I'm sharing with you can be achieved in short-term projects. They can be applied to many different instances that allow you to place rigor into your processes so that you can maximize the chances for success. A brief map would be if we start at a certain time point and we wanted to get to somewhere else where it was a desirable future state, how will we get there? Well, the natural flow of events would often lead us to nowhere different than where we are unless we have a strategic path. The whole goal of this process is to develop that strategic path. In the initial phase, the vision, the desired future state, is mapped out and articulated by a leader or by the leader and many people within the organization, depends how that organization functions. Once a compelling vision is created, we want to take a look and fold back. What do I mean by this? You do this when you plan a dinner party. If I want to have dinner at 6 o'clock, I better set the table by 5:30. I better have gotten the napkins out. I better have done last-minute shopping for the cheese plate. And you go back and, I want to serve marinated meat, so I better, the meat store closes on Saturday, so I better be there Thursday, but I want to marinate it. You get the picture. By folding back, you kind of get a sense of where you want to be, and then you work the path forward. The planning phase is what we call this folding back. And the statement, if I want to have dinner by 6 o'clock, I better set the table by 5:30, etc., is something we do commonplace when we plan a dinner party, but it actually happens so rarely when we plan big initiatives like a new outpatient center. So the process is, by going through that, we then need to move forward and develop that plan. That plan starts by coming in with an analysis that gives us the rigor to develop what we'll share with you, an operational plan. And we will hit barriers. We'll try to predict those barriers so that we can prevail. So our strategic planning has these three components: conceptual, analytical, and operational. Conceptual, it's sort of an emotional, subjective area where we choose our intended future. Analytical, we test the dreams against reality. And operational, we convert it to a plan of action. In the conceptual phase, we define who we are by articulating the mission, what we believe in by identifying our values, core elements that we don't give up, and where do we want to be by defining the future. Once we've defined that, this is the flagpole around which we will generate the plan to get to that desired future state. Mission statements. Who are we? Well, let's see if you can guess. To inspire and nurture the human spirit. Anybody know what company this might be? Well, I'll add the second line. One person, one cup, in one neighborhood at a time. That's Starbucks. To protect the public health by ensuring safety, efficacy, and security of human and veterinary drugs, biologic products, and medical devices. Good. To organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Good. To accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. Tesla. Interesting. So, some of this is, can you identify yourself and share that with the outer world, but also, is this the flagpole? Is this this is what we do every day? Does everyone in the organization know that? So mission statements are important because they're a part of what we do every day. Values, what do we hold sacred? So HubSpot is a popular company in Boston. In HubSpot, our values are good judgment and solving for the customer, and employees who work have heart. They share the characteristics of humility, empathy, adaptability, remarkability, if that's a word, and a transparent culture. So those values are the things we do not give up no matter what we do. And when you're trying new efforts, you say, is this consistent with our value system? Vision, that's where we want to be. And, the big problem with a lot of vision statements is they wind up suggesting that we'll achieve something as broad and undefined as world peace. And we need to put in much more detail if we want a meaningful vision. So, for example, good vision statements define the terms of a time frame and are specific and measurable. So, for example, we may want to be a top 10 radiology department as judged by the Blue Ridge rankings in NIH, as judged by Doximity rankings, as judged by the placement of leaders in recognized programs throughout the country. Definable things, rather than I want to be a great radiology department. The second phase is the analysis phase, and here I'm going to share with you three tools. In this analysis phase, we insert rigor so that we can really test what we aspire to be versus what the reality is out there. And so we are balancing this conceptual phase, which is emotional and creative, versus the objective and rational part of an analytical phase. The three tools are listed here. Porter from the Harvard Business School, I think Jeff talked about him the other day, is really good at these constructs. And here we're seeing that the rivalry is one force, potential new entrants, bargaining power of suppliers, substitute products, and bargaining power of buyers. And let me just frame this for you in the context of something you may relate to, that is this outpatient imaging center initiative. So, intra-industry rivalry. If the business unit is UT Southwestern Radiology, there's the Radiology Associates of North Texas, Preferred Imaging, and Baylor, amongst several. If I look at bargaining power suppliers, who are our suppliers? Well, we need the OEMs for the machines, medical physicists, labor unions for our techs, IT vendors, EMR vendors. We need to be considering the power of the buyers, and the buyers are interesting in healthcare. Is it an insurance agent? Is it a local employer? Potential new entrants, neurologists who open up an office and want to read their own neuro MRIs, radiation oncologists buying more and more imaging equipment, and the large imaging consortia that are arising. And then substitute products. Am I thinking about, all right, yes, I may need a new imaging center. How is genetic testing, AI, and liquid biopsy going to influence it? And those decisions are important. Another tool is the SWOT. Many of you, and most of you probably have engaged in this. Strengths and weaknesses are mostly intrinsic to the organization, opportunities and threats mostly extrinsic. And we view these in the context of the competitive space. A modified SWOT is a different formulation where you list them outside of this box, and inside you put the combinations. And this I found much more useful because it's leading you to an action plan. So in the SO box, that's something that is very desirable and you'll likely pursue. In the WO box, we compensate for our weaknesses or pass. In the ST box, we want to differentiate or reposition so that we minimize those threats. And this is the box that people often spend way too much time on, and they actually get in their way of making progress in the strength opportunity box. So here, look carefully, look for a defensive plan, or just avoid it, but don't spend a whole lot of time trying to build up strategies that will mitigate WNT. Third tool is the options analysis. Here we have considerations against options. So here would be the purchase of an MR piece of equipment and the weighting of these. This is all subjective, that's why it's semi-quantitative, but we can go through and give you an example of how I might weight this. I multiply it by the weight, the score is multiplied by the score, and then you get a summation, you'd run it across and calculate a total. This is better than, oh, I just think it's Siemens. We found this useful in many, many applications, and I'll show you just a snapshot that I took recently from when we were looking at a MEG and some choices we needed to make. And this is, it's not as neat as a slide, but this is what happens on a whiteboard. And so we came up and we made a choice based on the number. Now, we have a debate and a discussion, but it's very, very important to have this tool. Last is the operational phase, and here I'm going to just talk about the balanced scorecard. It's called balanced because we often just focus on finances, but we have opportunities to look at internal business, customer perspectives, innovation, and learning. How are we seen by our customer? What must we excel at in our internal businesses? How do we improve and create value? And of course, are we viable? But unfortunately, many times we focus only on the viability financially. By creating constructs like this, the perspectives of financial, customer learning and growth, and internal business are identified, and then we break those up into objectives, measures, targets, and initiatives. The perspective is which component, objective, what do we want to achieve, a measure, what do we want to evaluate, target, what's good, task to execute. In the targets, we want to have clear benchmarks or based on past performance, and the initiatives need to be clearly defined with accountability. I will skip over this quickly and just give you an example of one case in which I took the perspective of the customer. Let's just say I wanted to increase patient safety as I was seeking the overall goal of establishing a better combination of clinical care and academic accomplishment. The metrics I submit to you here, the target can be defined, and the initiatives are clearly stated. Those initiatives then we'll be looking at, that's the to-do. Now the other element for accountability can be this. add a timeline, and the responsible people. So this is something that we might do, and this is an example of what something that might occur. By having this construct, I find it's been very, very helpful and very useful to really gaining progress here. I would submit to you that it's not just these giant, big plans about where we want the department to be in 5 to 10 years, but even small projects do benefit from this kind of balanced scorecard, and I highly recommend that. So to conclude, I've tried to share with you the fact that there are 3 major areas to focus on. I went as fast as I could through some of the tools. I encourage you to read more because, of course, to become facile, you've got to have a working knowledge. But this gives us a chance to prevail in the outside market, to have a great sense of accomplishment, and to have a rewarding experience for yourself and your faculty. Thank you very much.